How does faith shape human behavior? The anchor of faith, a concept woven into the very fabric of human history and consciousness, profoundly shapes the architecture of our behavior, acting not merely as a set of abstract beliefs, but as a foundational operating system for the soul. This sacred conviction, whether rooted in the wisdom of ancient scriptures, the revelation of a divine encounter, or the communal experience of worship, serves as the ultimate moral compass, pointing the believer consistently toward an eternal purpose beyond the transient concerns of the material world. It dictates a radical shift in perspective, transforming self-interest into selfless service, fear into transcendent peace, and immediate gratification into patient spiritual cultivation. When a person genuinely internalizes the doctrine that their actions are observed not only by their fellow humans, but by an omniscient, righteous creator, every choice, from the grandest life decision to the most intimate thought, takes on a colossal weight of eternal consequence. Thus, the pursuit of virtue is no longer a negotiable social contract, but a fundamental act of devotion, and the avoidance of sin becomes a deeply personal covenant, ensuring that faith translates directly into tangible, observable patterns of ethical conduct and moral fortitude in daily life, establishing a framework of spiritual accountability that transcends secular law. This internal moral legislation, gifted by faith, manifests outwardly as an unyielding commitment to justice and compassion, compelling the faithful to advocate for the marginalized and to practice radical empathy toward all creation, recognizing in every individual a spark of the divine image. The theological imperative to love thy neighbor as thyself is not a polite suggestion, but a divine command, one that necessitates the active suppression of human vices such as envy, malice, and pride, replacing them with humility, forgiveness, and generosity. Behavior, in the context of deep religious belief, becomes a form of worship, an ongoing testament to one's commitment, where acts of charity are viewed as deposits into a spiritual account, and moments of patience under trial are understood as opportunities for spiritual refinement. Moreover, faith provides a robust framework for dealing with suffering and adversity. Where despair might paralyze the non-believer, the person of faith finds an indomitable source of strength and hope in the promise of divine providence and ultimate redemption, allowing them to endure hardship with grace and resilience, setting an example for the community and reinforcing the collective strength of their religious tradition. The rituals and communal practices prescribed by faith further cement these behavioral patterns, creating disciplined rhythms of life that reinforce the sacred narrative daily, weekly, and throughout the seasons of the year. Prayer, meditation, fasting, and pilgrimage are not arbitrary customs. They are deliberate, repetitive acts designed to reorient the individual away from the chaotic demands of the ego and back toward the divine center, fostering habits of stillness, self-control, and mindfulness. These communal acts, such as shared worship services or religious festivals, forge powerful bonds of solidarity, teaching individuals to prioritize the needs of the religious community, the Ummah, or the body of Christ, above their own isolationist desires. The expectation of congregational participation instills a profound sense of responsibility and belonging, where the honor and conduct of one reflects upon the whole, thus providing a potent, socially reinforced incentive for exemplary behavior and moral uprightness, making faith an essential architect of both personal character and communal cohesion, shaping the identity of entire civilizations. Furthermore, the concept of accountability, often involving a judgment after death, provides an unparalleled deterrent against immorality and a powerful motivation for ethical living that is unmatched by purely secular systems. The fear of divine retribution and the hope for eternal reward, the belief in heaven and hell, serve as powerful psychological levers, influencing choices in private moments when no human authority is present to observe or enforce compliance. This internal surveillance mechanism means that a believer is always on duty in a moral sense, recognizing that integrity is not about being caught, but about maintaining a pure heart before the ultimate judge. This eschatological framework elevates mundane decisions to a cosmic level, meaning the choice to return a lost item, to speak a kind word, or to resist a temptation becomes an act loaded with eternal significance, creating a deep, consistent wellspring of motivation for good deeds. The promise of immortality contingent on righteous living fundamentally changes the calculus of immediate gain versus lasting virtue, ensuring that faith's influence reaches into the very core of human motivation. Faith profoundly shapes the believer's understanding of time, transforming a finite lifespan into a preparatory stage for an infinite existence, thereby changing the perceived value of material accumulation versus spiritual investment. The ephemeral nature of earthly possessions is juxtaposed against the enduring wealth of good works and spiritual merit, encouraging generosity and detachment from avarice. This perspective encourages a minimalist approach to consumption and a maximalist approach to contribution, as the faithful seek to use their resources, time, talent, and treasure to serve God and humanity rather than merely hoarding them for personal comfort. This redirection of ambition, from building earthly monuments to cultivating eternal virtue, results in behavioral patterns characterized by profound altruism, responsible stewardship of the earth, and a greater willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for the benefit of others, creating vast charitable organizations and networks of mutual aid that have historically been the backbone of social welfare in many cultures, demonstrating faith's potent and practical impact on human economic behavior. In the realm of communication and relational behavior, faith often imposes a high standard of truthfulness, integrity, and charitable speech. The religious condemnation of gossip, slander, and deceit, often considered grievous sins, fosters a culture of respectful discourse and reliable testimony, strengthening the bonds of trust within the community and beyond. The imperative to forgive those who trespass against us, a central tenet in many traditions, provides a mechanism for resolving conflict and preventing cycles of revenge, promoting healing and reconciliation where human instinct might default to bitterness and reprisal. This theological emphasis on mercy and reconciliation is a conscious behavioral override of primal human aggression, demanding a higher standard of interaction that fosters peace, understanding, and long-term harmonious coexistence. By demanding self-examination before criticism of others, faith encourages humility and a focus on personal improvement rather than judgmentalism, ultimately refining the believer's social intelligence and enhancing their capacity for loving relationship. The commitment demanded by faith extends to intellectual and cognitive behavior, encouraging a continuous, lifelong pursuit of sacred knowledge and wisdom, viewing learning as an act of worship itself. This commitment fosters a discipline of mind, critical reflection on one's own biases, and an openness to transcendence and mystery that counteracts the intellectual complacency that can plague secular thought. The believer is encouraged to constantly align their thoughts, their worldview, and their scientific understandings with the principles revealed in their sacred texts, leading to behavioral patterns characterized by thoughtful inquiry, a principled skepticism toward fleeting trends, and a dedication to intellectual honesty rooted in a belief in ultimate truth. This intellectual discipline often provides the moral and philosophical grounding necessary to navigate complex modern challenges without succumbing to moral relativism, ensuring that the faithful's behavior remains anchored to timeless principles rather than shifting cultural norms, making them stable contributors to the ongoing moral dialogue of society. Ultimately, faith shapes human behavior by offering a complete, cohesive narrative of existence, a cosmology that answers the deepest questions of origin, purpose, and destiny, thereby imbuing every action with ultimate meaning and transforming mere existence into a sacred vocation. It provides an inner coherence, aligning a person's external conduct with their deepest internal convictions, mitigating the hypocrisy that often plagues those whose morals are situational or temporary. The anticipation of meeting the Creator, the desire to be found worthy, and the daily inspiration drawn from the lives of prophets and saints who serve as behavioral archetypes collectively propel the believer toward a perpetual striving for moral excellence. This deep religious motivation thus provides the most powerful, enduring, and comprehensive structure for cultivating virtuous human behavior, transforming isolated individuals into a purposeful, morally committed community dedicated to the service of God and the betterment of humanity, ensuring that faith remains the paramount shaper of the ethical and practical life.